Now, you guys are managers. Most big bands have managers. We have lots of up-and-coming indie bands here who would probably love managers. Maybe talk a little bit about the responsibility of a manager. What kind of things do you do in a day? What kind of value do you bring to a band on a regular basis?
Could I ask a question of the audience? How many are in a band? And solo artists? Any? A couple. And any managers? And all of the above? Okay.
What do you guys want to start? What does a manager do?
What do we do on a day? Oh man, what don't we do?
How much time do we have?
Hour and a half?
It varies from. The easy answer is you're marketing music, trying to sell art, which is very difficult. Something that you've created, you're so passionate about. Now we've got to turn it into product, and that's the kind of a weird way of sort of describing it. But essentially, that's what we're doing. We're trying to market and find an audience for this music. So that's part of the day. But during this whole marketing period, you're looking at how the music is promoted, whether it's in the case of let's say, a mainstream rock act, what radio stations you're going to go after, how it goes down to like the press shots, how the band's image is going to be portrayed, video if you have one, what kind of online community you're building. Basically, you're looking at everything, but we hire the right people. So if you want to tour, okay, we got to have a good booking agent, for instance, that takes care of all the live, because manager's duty is not to book shows. Generally speaking, at least in my case, that's not what we do. You pay an agent, they go find the shows. An accountant takes care of the business. Again, that's something that manager should remain at arm's length, so that if there is any discrepancy in any accounting, you have a third party deal with it, because the last thing you want is at the end of a tour, there's money missing, and if it flows through the manager's hands, they're the first person that the artist is looking at, like, why didn't I make any money? Record company, if there is one, they're responsible for a large part of the marketing. So you're almost like a quarterback, just sort of guiding or sort of strategically planning what moves the band is going to be doing. But in a typical day, you're talking to the radio programmers. Sometimes you have a relationship with radio stations, so you actually may call so-and-so and say, hey, how do you like that single, or could use your support if you're not getting the spins. You got to call Much Music once in a while, see how they're reacting to your act. Call your booking agent. So there's that side of the business, as well as dealing with the band on the road that maybe is stranded in Minneapolis and needs a guitar, for instance. Sandy's dealt with that today. So there's any day is a roulette wheel of could anything come up.
I do a few hours of therapy a day too for them and me.
So go ahead and take the ball.
No, I think it's pretty much everything. When people ask me, well, what do you do? Really, my relationship with my artists, I probably see them more than their husbands and wives see them. Like, really, it's that intimate. Because we're the only person. For instance, my artist Serena has been on tour for months and months. So, like, even things like phoning her mom and saying, like, look, she's okay, and because that's how little she's even talking in the scope of what's going on, and everything's so fast. We're paying oftentimes, is there rent paid? Is there a hydro paid? Stuff they just forget. We were saying at dinner tonight, like, they just sort of forget after a while, because when you're touring non-stop like that, and for my girl Serena, it's going on to a year now straight, and she has another year and a half left. You're not really home much, and so we're doing a lot of, apart from being the liaison with publishers, agents, record companies. But the other new thing, I don't know if you guys are doing this, I'm doing a lot of sync stuff where we're trying to find stuff for movies, I do a lot of the law myself too, to be honest with you, just because I've done it for years and I'm not going to pay those guys. So
Yeah, we'll look over contracts as well.
yeah.
But one thing we do advise them, that, again, depending on the type of agreement, we can go see a lawyer now, but this is basically, makes sense. Yeah.
Great. Bands, as they start to grow, become more successful, they can sell out some gigs, they're starting to get some play on the radio. At what point do you think a band should start looking for a manager, and how do they go about doing that? I mean, you've got Our Lady Peace, or Finger Louder, for your case, Serena Ryder, or Julie Black. At what point do these artists start looking for a manager, and how do they get a hold of someone like yourselves?
Personally, I like to find the act myself. I don't like better than if someone comes to me. I love discovering new talent, and when I first started managing Hawksley or even Hayden, I think I was one of 2 people at those shows. And the idea of taking something that's that brilliant and genius and to get it to a level of 3,000-4,000 seats or bigger is really, really exciting. So most of the stuff I work with, I've discovered myself. The only artist actually that I haven't has been Julie Black, which came to me through the record company. Actually phoned me and said, hey, will you take this on? And even for me, that I've never worked in urban or hip hop, but it was such a challenge to just try to make that work. So I took it on. But pretty much everything I work with, I've found either because some friend, generally not in the industry, has phoned me and said, you got to check this out, or I've just heard something and went, oh my God, that's incredible. I got to do that. So I don't know if when the right time is. Maybe you guys could do more.
No, I usually tell bands or artists, whenever you feel that there's way too much work for you to handle, a lot of times bands will come early on and they're pretty good, or they've got a good buzz, and they'll say, looking for management, and I'll say, whether or not we're busy, or just tell them, like, you really don't need management if you can do it, if you can do the job. Lorena McKenna is a prime example of an artist who's done it herself and built her brand into a multi-million dollar company, because she was able to separate herself from the artistic side and focus on the business. But it's really difficult to do that if you're on tour, you're writing, you're in a session. You can't be on the phone talking to your agent about the ticket price in Stockholm or whatever. So that's why the manager comes along that can help deal with the business. But the short answer, I guess, whenever you're overwhelmed and you think you've done as much as you can to get your band to this level, and people are starting to notice, agents are calling, record companies, publishers, what do I do? Sometimes bands will go to a lawyer to help navigate and sort of guide them a bit. But generally, by the time you get to signing a record deal, I would advise having a manager present at some point. And we find bands from referrals, or it's very rare that in a room and all of a sudden, hey, no one's heard of this artist, and they fall in your lap. It's usually referred to by a lawyer or another manager or another band,